Hi. Today we'll be discussing what a hiring process is and why it's important for your small business to do it correctly. A hiring process is the process of reviewing applications, selecting the right candidate to interview, interviewing them, and making a hiring decision based on performing pre-employment tests and background screens. It's not much different in a small business than it is in a big business. As a small business owner, the hiring process is super important. Hiring at a small business is something that most business owners will face at some point. As a small business owner, I personally know how hiring can affect a business as a whole. Even if you feel like you've made the perfect hire, there is a potential for an issue in the future. Human beings are notoriously unpredictable. Even if your new hire is amazing, it's important to be prepared for the worst. This information covers a few steps for when you are ready to hire an employee. Your first step when hiring a new employee is to be sure that the infrastructure of the business is prepared. Obviously, the salary for the new employee must be in the budget. In addition to that, it's hugely important that the job description is updated for the new role. First, when you create a job description, be very careful to create the job description for the role and not for the person who may already be in that role. For example, if your sister Sandy is in the accounting manager role because no one else was there to assist, make sure that your job description does not reflect Sandy's ability to do the job, but who you are looking to hire in the future. Second, be sure that the job description includes physical requirements for that role. This is important if an employee gets injured and can no longer perform his or her duty. As described in the job description, you may legally be able to backfill that role. Something we get asked often is, why do you need HR if you own a family business? Many of the businesses we work with are family businesses, but it's so important to keep in mind that even if you feel that your business is a family business, there's no way to guarantee that one of your new or old employees won't become disgruntled at some point and sue you. As an HR professional, our goal is to assist business owners with the hiring process and ensure that all paperwork is correctly completed and filed. Lawsuits regarding the hiring process occur pretty regularly. Making sure that your employees are not hiring illegally or interviewing illegally is really important. Outlined below are the basic steps for your new hire process. Each step has an additional blog that dives further into the topic, but this is a great place to get started. The first step is creating a job description and posting the role. This should always be your first step when hiring. If you need to hire for a position, be sure to have an updated job description. There are so many reasons, but one of the most important is that you want to hire the right person. The biggest tip here is to be sure you create the job description for the role, as discussed earlier. This must seem like common sense, but if your mom's an accountant and she doesn't have a master's in accounting, make sure the job description states the minimum requirement. Number 2 is reviewing applicants. Application review means reviewing each application or resume that comes through and determine whether they have the knowledge, skills, and ability for the position. I typically separate candidates into 2 piles of those who are and are not a good fit. I pre-screen the candidates. That's number 3. Pre-screening is the next step. I create a list of pre-screening questions with the hiring manager. The purpose of the pre-screen is to determine whether or not this candidate actually is a possibility and that they meet the minimum qualifications for the job based on the job description. Interview in person selected candidates. An interview is a meeting between the job seeker and the employer to evaluate whether the candidate has the right qualifications for the job. It's important that the manager knows who they're interviewing and be sure that your managers are trained on the legalities of an interview. There are certain questions that are legally not permitted to be asked, such as the age of the candidate or if they're planning on having kids in the future. Once the interviews have been completed, candidates will be selected based on that. Choosing a candidate is done by comparing the candidate's qualifications to a predetermined list of qualifications. It's important that the candidate does meet the minimum required as described in the job description. Performing background and reference checks is the next step. This step is not one that should ever be skipped in the hiring process. I have personally seen disastrous effects of not background screening and reference checking employees. For example, hiring someone who has been convicted of embezzlement to manage your accounting department is probably not the best idea. In addition to that, you may be liable for negligent hiring if you hire someone who could potentially harm another employee or a client. As defined on SHRM.org, under the doctrine of negligent hiring, an employer is liable for harm its employees inflict upon another if the employer knew or should have known the employee's potential risk. In other words, negligent hiring is a claim made by an injured party against an employer based on the theory that the employer should have known about the employee's background. We'll go into more details on this on an upcoming blog, and we can get some more information then. Finally, an offer letter. An offer letter is important in order to clearly draw out what you, the business owner, is offering to a new hire. Verbal agreements on rate of pay and position only go so far. You do not want to hire an employee and then realize they heard you tell them you would pay them $30 an hour when you told them you would pay them $13. There are many potential issues with offer letters, and those specifics will be covered in a later article. For now, be sure that you know as the business owner, do not contractually obligate yourself in any way, and always have a certified HR professional review the offer letter before sending it out. The most important way to protect yourself is to be prepared and be knowledgeable about what you're doing. When hiring a new employee, there is many things to keep in mind. That's why working hand in hand with an experienced certified HR pro is a great idea. If you don't have a certified HR pro, Cyber provides these HR professionals for you, will assist you in clearly drawing out your HR standard operating procedures, help you cross your T's and dot your I's, and make sure that all of these steps are completed as described in this video. Feel free to reach out to us on cyber.co, speak directly with one of us, and let us help you hire your next employee.